Yo, what's up? Dr. Swole here, MD, pro physique athlete. Today I'm going to be giving a full 4-day Mike Mentzer style program. I've been getting a lot of requests to cover a program like this that's low volume, high intensity. Mike Mentzer was a bodybuilder in the 70s who was very well known for his low volume, high intensity training approach. Today I'll be showing an example of how to integrate that type of approach into a 4-day hypertrophy setup. Here's an overview of the split we'll be using. It is a body part or bro split. So we've got shoulders, triceps, back and hamstrings, chest and biceps, and quads and calves. This type of training isn't for everyone, and we'll talk about that later in the pros and cons, but I do think that it can be advantageous for some people. We'll start off with the program walkthrough where I'll share everything you'll need to know to run the program yourself, including exercises, sets, and reps. Then we'll talk about the weekly layout or how to spread out your days across the week. And finally, we'll talk about the pros and cons of this high intensity Mike Mentzer style program. All right, let's do our program walkthrough. This is Dr. Swole's 4-day program. It's the Mike Mentzer style low volume body part split. We've got shoulders and triceps, back and hamstrings, chest and biceps, and quads and calves. Here are the exercises and there are the sets and reps. Down here we have the total number of sets for each workout so you have an idea of workout length. And here are the total number of sets for each muscle group each week. Let's get started on shoulders and triceps day. We start off with barbell overhead press 1 by 6 to 8. You're going to see a lot of work in the 6 to 8 rep range here. This was Mike Mentzer's favorite rep range. And I do think that there is a lot of value in focusing on those lower rep ranges and higher weights if you aren't doing a lot of volume. We'll talk more about that in the pros and cons section. Next, we have close grip bench press for the chest and triceps, just working up to one top heavy set of 6 to 8 reps. Keep in mind here that I'm just showing the work sets for these exercises, so you are going to warm up to those heavy weights and make sure you get a good quality set when you hit it. Then we have easy bar skull crushers, 2 sets of 8 to 12 reps, and you're going to do 2 drop sets after this. Mike Mentzer used a lot of intensity techniques like drop sets, forced reps, and negatives. I'll let you experiment with those throughout this program. You should be trained to failure on most of these sets, with maybe the exception of squat, bench, and deadlift. You will see me pencil in some intensity techniques like drop sets, but a lot of it will be up to your interpretation. Then we have barbell upright rows for the side delts and the traps, 3 sets of 8 to 12. Finally, we have machine lateral raises for the side delts, 3 sets of 10 to 15, and after that you're going to do 2 drop sets. This is a very low volume program, the lowest of all the programs that I've put out so far, and you're going to see a lot of just 1 or 2 set exercises. You're going to really have to focus on pushing these sets hard, and this was a core of the Mike Mentzer training philosophy. A program like this will force you to really get quality out of every set, have your technique dialed in, and really push the intensity. Next, we have back and hamstrings day. On this day, you're going to work up to 1 top heavy set on the deadlift of 6 to 8 reps. Then we have barbell back extensions here for the glutes and hamstrings. You're going to work up to 1 top heavy set of 6 to 8 reps, followed by a back off set of 8 to 12 reps. Then we have leg curls for the hamstrings, 1 top heavy set of 8 to 12 reps, followed by 2 drop sets. Drop sets are my favorite intensity technique because they allow you to add in a bit of volume and some metabolic stress without adding a whole lot of fatigue having to use heavy weights. Then we have cable rows for the back, 3 sets, and you're going to do 2 main heavy sets of 6 to 8 reps, followed by 1 back off set of 10 to 15 reps. This type of top set back off method is very versatile, as you can see. It doesn't necessarily have to be fixed to 1 top set. You can have multiple top sets and a variable number of back off sets. Finally, we have reverse grip lat pull downs for the back, 3 sets of 8 to 12, and after that you're going to do 2 drop sets. Okay, going on to chest and biceps day, we start off with bench press for the chest. 1 top heavy set of 6 to 8 reps. If you are going close to failure, make sure you have someone spotting you. Then we have incline dumbbell curls for the biceps, 2 sets of 6 to 8 reps. Some people might argue this, but I do think that you can program isolation movements like curls in low rep ranges, even down to the 6 to 8 rep range. But you do need to choose exercises that are well suited for this, and you have to make sure that your technique is strong on all reps. While you have this incline bench, you can superset with incline dumbbell bench presses for the chest. 2 sets, and we're using a top set back off method again here. 1 top heavy set of 6 to 8 reps, followed by a back off set of 8 to 12 reps. Doing 2 sets like this, where you have a top set and a back off set, actually gives you a lot of flexibility in programming because you can get a mixture of more strength oriented heavy work along with a little bit more volume afterwards. Then we have rope hammer curls for the biceps, 2 sets, and we're doing 2 sets of 10 to 15 reps, followed by 2 drop sets. And to do these drop sets, I usually like dropping the weight by somewhere between 1/3 to half with every drop set. Then we have machine flies for the chest, 2 sets of 10 to 15 reps, followed by 2 drop sets. Going on to our quads and calf day, we start with squats for the quads, 1 top heavy set of 6 to 8 reps. After that, leg presses, 2 sets of 6 to 8 reps. And while you're on the leg press machine, you can also do calf raises for the calves for equivalent sets. We're doing a myo-rep scheme here, so you're going to do 2 sets of 8 to 12 reps, followed by 4 mini sets of 3 to 5 reps with only about 10 seconds of break in between. These are basically like rest pause sets, and they allow you to keep the intensity up while accumulating more volume. Then we have leg extensions for the quads, 2 sets of 10 to 15 reps, and you're going to do 2 drop sets after that. And finally, we have Bulgarian split squats for the quads and the glutes and hamstrings, working up to 1 top set of 8 to 12 reps. Notice that even though this is a low volume program and bro split, there are some ways that I sneak in some slightly higher frequency. For example, if you are doing sumo deadlifts, you are going to involve your quads to some extent on your back and hamstring day, so your quads are getting trained twice per week. And close grip bench press, even though I count it more as a tricep exercise, also hits your chest, so your chest is also getting trained twice per week. Remember, this is a high intensity program, so basically all sets take into failure. Make sure you have a spotter around if needed, and get creative with your intensity techniques as long as you're being safe. What other unique programming styles do you want to see me cover? Let me know in the comments below. Alright, now that you've seen the program, let's go through a program layout. So here's my preferred layout of days. We have shoulders and triceps, rest. Back and hamstrings, rest. Chest and biceps, quads and calves, and rest. As you guys know, I typically favor twice per week frequency or higher, so a bro split like this is different from what you've seen me post before. I'll go through some reasons for why I chose this particular one. Specifically, there are some features in the split that sneakily increase your frequency. As we mentioned, your chest is basically getting trained twice per week because we put close grip bench press as a main tricep movement on shoulders and triceps day. And quads are getting hit twice per week if you're using a sumo deadlift. A couple other little features. Since biceps are used indirectly on back movements, your biceps are getting trained twice per week. And since triceps get used indirectly with your pushing chest movements, your triceps are also getting trained twice per week. So as you can see, through your intelligent placement of exercises, you can indirectly increase the frequency regardless of the split. In terms of the placement of the days, you want to spread out your rest days as much as possible so you get the most out of them. I particularly placed back and hamstring day on this day because it's flanked by rest days, so you get the most around it, and this is your toughest workout of the program. Your quad day would be the next toughest one, and notice that I put an upper body day the day before it. This is because your chest training won't affect your quad training as much as it might the other way around. So if you're really tired out after a tough leg day, you can impact your day's training the day after. In general, when you're laying out a body part split, you want your leg day training to be spaced out as much as possible, which we did here. You also want your heavy pushing movements spread out as much as possible. So you'll see chest and shoulders and tricep days are nicely spread out. And if you have back and bicep training coming relatively close together, you want your back training coming first, because if you have really sore biceps, going into a back workout, that could interfere with your heavy compound movements. Okay, now let's talk about the pros and cons of this high intensity, low volume, Mike Mentzer style bro split. Starting off with the pros. This program is relatively time efficient. When you're using a low volume, high intensity approach, you tend to save on time since you're not doing as many sets and you're not spending as much time resting in between sets. This is possible because we're training with high intensities. I actually think this is a big advantage for a lot of people, and for a lot of people, training to failure actually is a good idea because of this point. If you don't have very much time each week to train, say you're really busy with your job, family, or other pursuits, you may not be able to fit in a higher volume program. If you're really trying to optimize things and you're more advanced, for most people, I do recommend going to higher volumes. But if you don't have the ability to fit in all those sets, then you really do want to raise up the intensity to make up for it. Now, keep in mind that I said relatively time efficient, and that's because this Mike Mentzer style training program isn't necessarily the most time efficient way to train. Even though you're not doing that many sets, you are training with heavy weights on compound movements, and that will require quite a bit of warm up for those top heavy sets. Warming up properly for your top heavy set is especially important in this program since you have so few working sets. So you really got to make sure that you're getting the most out of every one. The other thing here is that since you're training with such high intensities, going to failure on most sets, you are going to require longer rest periods in between those sets when you do have multiple. Now, the next advantage of this program is that it ensures high intensity that's done consistently. A lot of people, especially beginners, aren't actually training hard enough in the gym. For the most part, I recommend people aim for 1 to 2 reps in reserve to make sure they're getting a good stimulus. But for some people, especially beginners, if I told you to hit 2 reps in reserve, you might actually be quite a bit farther away from that, like 3 or 4 or 5 reps away. And if you're 5 reps away from failure, you're not going to be getting such a good hypertrophy stimulus. But if I tell you to push all the way to failure where you can't get in another rep with good form, or the weight actually stops on the way up and goes back down, then you know that you gave it everything. And I actually think there's a strong argument for beginners including some type of failure training regularly in their programs. And this to make sure that you know that you're training hard enough even on those other weeks when you aren't going to failure. There is quite a bit of debate in the scientific community as to whether a high intensity, low volume approach is better versus a lower intensity, higher volume approach. I think ultimately this is something you'll have to experiment with yourself, and it's going to be somewhat individually dependent. Again, for most people, as you get more experience, you are going to want to try higher volumes. But if you are short on time, this type of high intensity training can be very efficient. Now, the other part of this is the consistency point. For less experienced lifters, they have trouble estimating their exact RIR, so it's hard to target a specific proximity to failure. But if I told you to go to failure on all your sets, then you know for sure that you're going to 0 RIR. And this can help with consistency in terms of tracking progress over time. Next, this program gives you lots of recovery time between training bouts of the same muscle group. When you're working with low frequencies like once per week, you have so much time in between training the same muscle group again directly that you can really smash it hard when you do train. This is especially helpful for people who are less advanced and have trouble controlling the exact amount of stimulus. So for example, a beginner might overdo it on a certain day and end up really sore for days. If you had to run a high frequency training program like 4 or 5 days per week for each muscle group, you'd end up spending a lot of time training the same muscle groups again when they're still sore. So when you're using a low frequency approach, you're insulated from that problem. Finally, this program allows for intense mental focus. And this comes with that bro split where you're just training 1 or 2 muscle groups a day, plus the fact that we're using low volumes and high intensities. This is more of a personal preference thing. Some people just really enjoy being able to zone in on 1 or 2 muscle groups. If you find this is the only way for you to train and actually stick to a program, then by all means, go with a method that allows you to be sustainable. There's no point in trying to grind away at a really tough program that you don't enjoy and that you ultimately give up and fall off of. Okay, now let's talk about cons of this Mike Mentzer style program. First of all, the volumes may be too low. This is the first critique that I will address. Mike Mentzer's high intensity, low volume approach is attractive to a lot of people and it can work for some. But for a lot of people, when you get more advanced, you are going to need higher volumes to really optimize progress. Keep in mind that the optimal volume will vary depending on the person and also for your muscle group. So you are going to have to experiment with things over time to find what's optimal for you. If you are starting with a low volume training style, keep with that as long as you're getting good results. And if you find yourself starting to stall, then try adding in more volume. Note that if you are increasing the volume on a high intensity program like this, you may need to back off on some of the failure training and intensity techniques. So don't expect to jump into one of my higher volume programs and smash every set to failure and do drop sets and forced reps. Next disadvantage here. With low volumes, you end up having less variety. Since we're not doing that many sets in total, we don't have that many sets to play with to add in different exercises or try different rep ranges. As we said, Mike Mentzer really liked that 6 to 8 rep range and going heavy. And I do think this is a great rep range to give you a lot of bang for your buck if you're only doing a few sets. But if you do have the time, there likely is a benefit from a hypertrophy standpoint of covering different rep ranges. You'll see that modeled in some of my higher volume programs when I start really adding in some of those higher rep ranges like 12 to 20, for example. Finally, this program has suboptimal fatigue distribution. Part of this comes from the split setup. The problem with bro splits is that you have some days that are much more difficult than others. For example, in this program, our back and hamstring day is significantly the toughest day. This includes both deadlifts and back training, which are your toughest movements for the legs and for the upper body. In comparison, your shoulders and triceps day and chest and biceps day are significantly easier. The problem with this is that when you're more advanced, if you have a really tough day on one day, you're not going to perform as well on every set on that day. as you would have if you spread out those tough sets across the week. This also brings in a big argument for having higher frequencies. If you're able to distribute your training for each muscle group a bit better across the week, you're more likely to be able to perform better on every single set overall. Note that this doesn't apply so much in a program like this where we're training with such low volume. But if you were to bring up the volumes, you really would want to start thinking about spreading out that training volume. If you want to run this program yourself, I will be sharing the Excel file in my Facebook group, so you can find the link to the group in the description below. Join the group and you can download the program for free. If you're looking to optimize a program for 4 days per week, check out my book, Dr. Swole's Guide to Upper Lower Splits, where I break down in detail one of my favorite splits of all time, the upper lower split. For another example of a 4-day hypertrophy program, check out this video where I share a program based on the push-pull split, which divides both your upper and lower body up into push days and pull days. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you want to optimize your gains, and we'll see you next time.